Hey everyone, welcome to a new edition of the program with Woj, presented by Novig. Our guest this week, Michigan basketball coach Dusty May, one of the elite coaches in all of college basketball, from taking Florida Atlantic to one of the most improbable Final Fours in NCAA history in 2023. He has now built a juggernaut at Michigan. Be sure to watch and listen to the program with Woj on YouTube, on X, and on your favorite podcast platform. Here's our conversation with Dusty May. This episode of the program is presented by Novig, the peer-to-peer sports prediction market with no house, no hidden fees, and the best odds in the game. Whether you're a casual fan or a sharp trader, Novig lets you play smarter, win bigger, and make sports picks in a whole new way. And it's available in over 35 states. Learn more at novig.us/Woj and use code the program for a match up to $100 on your first purchase. Welcome into Michigan, Coach Dusty May, my second favorite head basketball coach at Michigan, my former neighbor, Kim Barnes-Arico. We lived near each other in Jersey when she was at St. John's, and now she's got Michigan basketball rolling. But Dusty, great to be with you. Thanks for jumping in.
Thanks, Woj. It's great to be on. Coach Barnes-Arico, they're top 10 now. I watched them play Notre Dame Saturday on TV because they played in Detroit. And I don't know if I've seen a team play any harder than the ladies played. And they're talented, they're young, and it's inspiring to see the intensity and aggression that they play with. I've learned a lot from watching them, but they have a special group, so they're gonna have a heck of a season.
Yeah, and both your teams, both obviously, two programs now at Michigan, poised, I think, to make runs in a tournament. Dusty, I want to start with you back a little bit. And funny, I was thinking about your FAU team that went to the Final Four in 2023, really at the infancy of the portal and NIL. That team was historic in a lot of ways, and the run that you made getting to the Final Four, but I think also historic in this way. The fact that you kept that team together after a Final Four run at a mid-major, you look at the landscape now, and just a team at FAU that might go to the first round of the NCAA tournament would probably be almost impossible to keep together. Have you ever thought about it in that context?
Well, my first two experiences with NIL, first and foremost, was Elijah Martin about 2 weeks before the conference tournament started, came into my office and told me of some of the DMs he was getting and the amounts of money he was being offered during our season back then. And I couldn't believe it. I was shocked. And so at that point, I thought to myself, I probably need to have a plan going forward, because once and we were top 25, we had won 20 games in consecutive games that year. We probably would have gotten that large. I don't remember now all the details, but so that jump started me. So I spent the last 2 to 3 weeks of the season trying to plan ways to generate revenue, golf tournaments, whatever we could do in order to keep those guys. And so I actually negotiated with Elijah before the season ended. I just said, essentially, I think I went to the collective and they felt like there were some reasonable amounts that they could bring guys back for. And I went to him and I said, hey, Elijah, I said, I know you've got some pretty good offers. You showed me in DMs what they were. And I said, what would you be, and I know you want to stay here, and we obviously are going to be doing some special things here, but what would an amount be that you'd be really happy to come back with or ecstatic to come back? And he gave me a number, and I said, yeah, there's no way we're going to be able to raise that. I said, well, how about this? And it was significantly lower than his initial number, which was a significant discount from his other offers. And he said, Yeah, that if you guys can get me that, or if they can get me that, I'd be happy. And so we hugged and said, all right, that's the end of the story.
But listen, if it was just about money, you probably would have lost that whole group, even at that point. With what you
Yes.
had at FAU, you know, a big part of this show is we want to talk about team building, especially in an era where it looks different, and I think it feels different to coaches who've coached in other eras. It's not. It's just evolved. What was it about that team when you look back at it that kept them together to make another run when obviously, listen, they all could have went their separate ways and financially, cashed in a way that maybe wasn't fully available to them at FAU.
Woj, I would love to say that it was me and our staff. But I think first and foremost, that group the leaders and most of the best players came in together as a group of unheralded nobodies. And they grew together. They were similar in who they were as people, and they loved ball. They loved to compete. They loved what we built in Boca and who we became together. And so I think the loyalty to each other was extremely strong. Obviously, the loyalty to our staff. We'd been together. We invested hundreds and hundreds of hours, like a lot of coaches do in their players. But we had a real special bond with those guys. Even at one point, we had a player early in the portal process go in, and his parents asked if we would take him back after a school basically encouraged him to go in, and then they ended up not taking him after all. And so he wanted to come back, and he was a year ahead of John L. and Elijah, and Nick and G and all those guys. And I made the executive decision at that point that we can't bring him back and set the precedent because this next group is going to be special. They have the intangibles to be great. Now, hopefully they have the tangibles as well. Hopefully they can shoot and dribble and pass as well. But I knew they had championship level intangibles. So I said, that's going to set a really bad precedent. And as soon as these guys have success, they're going to think they can test the market. And then once they test the market, it's going to be very difficult for us to keep anyone that has real value. And so we told him he couldn't go into portal and come back. And so we decided to build it. And this is in year 3, build it around a group of freshmen, essentially, after going the veteran route in year 1, where we took a bunch of grad transfers and started out well and we laid the foundation, but we kind of did it in reverse order where we went old and then we went young after the first round.
Has your opinion, Dusty, changed about a player going in the portal and then coming back to you? Has that evolved?
I think every situation is different. I would never say I would never do anything because sometimes players get bad information. Sometimes the picture is different. I've said it repeatedly. If there's a junior all conference player in front of you and you're a guy that you would be terribly unhappy if you didn't play a lot and play a big role, then it's not that selfish of you to not want to sit behind an all-league player for the next 2 years that's going to play 32 minutes so you can play 8. And if we can't assure him that he would play another position or whatever the case, or have an opportunity to start at another position or have an opportunity to beat that guy out, I wouldn't be mad at that guy for doing what's best for him. Now, if it's a well-rounded guy who is going to embrace everything that's Michigan and the degree, or they want to go into coaching and we have a young staff that would be able to help him in his career, things like that, I would encourage him to look at the big picture. But if it's someone where basketball is A, B, and C, then I would probably understand why they had to go in another direction. And we'd even talked about it recently. Let's say hypothetically we had a kid redshirt and then the next year was dying to play and there wasn't an avenue or path for him to play for us because we were really good, we would endorse him going to another school with intentions of, if you do well enough and you want to come back and it makes sense, we would never close that door if that's what you wanted to do. We haven't talked to any players or other colleges about that, but I think that's probably in our near future. I know Gottlieb's been very vocal about wanting to do that. And I, to be honest, I said it at FAU a few times when we were battling, and you've been in these battles now that you're on this side of it, when we were competing against high majors for kids that they weren't 100% all in on, and we were. I've told a few coaches that, hey, if you push them our way, then we will play him, develop him, coach him like he's ours. And if there's a desire for him to leave by him and you guys, I'll sign off on it. Now, if we have to recruit him and I have to go into the house 3 times and I have to spend 50 hours away from my family and a lot of money recruiting him, and you try to come and get him, you got a freaking fight on your hands. I said, but if you actually hand deliver him, then I won't fight you on it, and I'll coach him and we'll develop him, and he may stay here for 4 years or he may be gone in a year depending on the situation, and I'm not opposed to that either.
Listen, tampering is not new in college basketball. I think it's in the era of not having to sit out. It's obviously much more aggressive. Well, 2 things, right? You don't have to sit out a year and we can pay you more money. What did you learn about tampering at FAU? Players weren't in the portal yet, but obviously, and if they have agents, teams can call their agents, or they can go directly to the players. What did you learn about tampering at that level, and how, as a mid-major coach, you best handle that with that player, with other schools, or do you just accept that's just how it goes? You've been in college basketball a long time. Did that era change, or that period of time at FAU change how you looked at it?
No, this first of all, the sit-out rule was simply a constraint, and now you've eliminated the one constraint that kept kids from transferring. Not the one, there's several, but the biggest constraint for kids transferring. No, I've always felt like the mid-majors and low majors probably tampered more than the high majors, because majority of freshmen would go to the high major level, and then if they didn't play, the first DNP they get, the assistant coach at school B is calling his AAU coach saying, I told you he wasn't going to play. We're going to hold a spot for him here. Let us know when he's ready.
There is zero chance that the mid-majors are tampering with high major players more than high majors are tampering at the mid-major.
No, there's more. There are a lot more high majors that can go down to help lows and mids.
Yeah.
Then there are lows and mids that can move up and help us.
I don't know.
Especially before the money was a factor. When it was just scholarships and playing time, the mids and low majors, you got to look at the amount of guys that transferred down, especially late signees. It's what I'm saying is the tamperings work both ways. And now what I've learned about tampering is the agents and the players and the parents tamper the coaches much more than the coaches tamper the players.
Let me ask you about that, Dusty. Agents. You were at Florida as a high major assistant early in your career. Listen, when I got to know you, probably the greatest, hallmark of your career, a mention in the Miracle of St. Anthony in 2004, Dusty, right? When you came in to recruit St. Anthony's when you were with Mike Davis. But back then, players, you certainly couldn't legally have an agent. That changed in recent years. And now at Michigan, I'm not sure, out of, 4 high school players you signed this year, portal guys, I would probably be surprised if every one of them didn't have an agent that you negotiated with, maybe a couple of high school guys. What have you learned about building partnerships with agents? What works for Michigan and works for you, and what doesn't work for you with agents?
Well, and you helped me in this regard, and I tried to several years ago, once the agents became prominent a few years ago in our business, I actually went to an agent convention in Chicago, one of those courses, just to meet and understand what they do, what their job is. And so I learned early on that whatever especially as a head coach, first of all, very few agents trust the assistant coaches, because as assistant coaches, our job is to acquire talent. And once it gets close to closing time, I think guys will say anything to finish the deal. Whereas a head coach, we understand that we're going to be held accountable. That's everything that's said. So we have to say what we think is the truth. And I'm not this coach is saying I spit the truth and I'm a truth teller and all this, because the truth is perception. It's what I believe to this day. If I change my mind tomorrow or we sign another player, the truth could change unintentionally. So I think you've got to be extremely honest with the agents of the intentions of your plans and how you forecast it working out for that player. And if anything changes, you have to be honest with, hey, I thought this and I gave him 10 games and he just hasn't played well. We've got to try something else. I'm just giving you a heads up. I feel like I've done everything I can, and he hasn't done his part. And even when I've had those conversations, I feel like the agent said, that's fair. Let's revisit this. Let's see what we can do together to get him playing better or in a better situation or whatever the case. So I think I just learned that you have to be 100% honest with those guys, because they're always going to have players, and they're going to hold us to what we tell them we're going to do.
Yeah, and I think understanding their jobs and what their constituency is, which is often the family. And so if an agent, they've got family members hitting them, the agent might have said, hey, they might recommend a school. We think this would be a good fit for you. Now, if it's not going great, they've got family members on them. And so, they're trying not to lose the client or lose the player. And I think just sort of understanding that part of it is important in this. And also, to me, having agents who value, at our level, development, growth. We might be at St. Bonaventure, we might be the first stop on the way somewhere else. We might be the second stop on the way to a third place. We might be the landing spot when it didn't work out in the Big Ten or the ACC. There's lots of different ways. And I think sort of finding agents who care about growth, who care about development, who care about fit, to me is the key. And sort of they know, to me, this year, especially now in my second year here at Bonaventure, getting agents on campus to let them come see our environment, see what practice looks like, see how the players live, see how Coach Schmidt coaches in practice, because they might have 30 or 40 guys in the portal. And then I think they can speak with much better conviction about who we are, our environment. And then I also think too, Dusty, when you get an agent on campus, they get a sense of which clients of theirs might be a fit at St. Bonaventure, which might not be a fit here. And to me, that's been something we tried to do this year.
Yeah, and Woj, as you know, the international players have had agents for the last 20 years or 15 years. They had to call them advisors because of the taboo relationship with agents. But back to your point, absolutely, they work for the players. They don't work for us. Their job is to help the players, to make them as much money as they possibly can, to put them in the best situation based on their professional expertise. So the agents I'm close with, I say that, look, I understand you work for them, you don't work for us, but we can't do that because we have to put the best team on the court for us. And we have to do what's best for Michigan. I work for Michigan, you work for the player. And and I've said this repeatedly in the last year, the one thing that we're all missing out of this, I think all of us, coaches, administrators, search firms, agents, is that when you have a deal, and now every player we bring in is a deal, it's a contract, it's negotiated, both parties should feel good about the deal. If I walk away feeling like we took advantage of a player because he didn't have an agent, then I'm wrong. If they walk away from the deal, feel like they took advantage of us because of maybe desperation, a timing desperation, then shame on them. A good partnership is when both sides walk away feeling, hey, that is fair for both of us. It's fair on their part and it's fair on our part. Now let's really form this partnership and make sure this works for both of us.
Dusty, you were a student manager famously for Coach Bob Knight at Indiana. How would he have handled the portal NIL era as a head coach? Would he have?
Well, he's incredibly intelligent. So I think he would have handled it well, like he handled every other change. This isn't the first, back then I remember being a kid and all you heard about was the 9:30 games on school nights. And then you heard that Penn State's coming to the Big Ten and it's going to run the conference. And then on and on and on. So there's always been disruptions in every industry. And this is just three major disruptions happening at the same time, but they're happening at the same time because we've let this go too far. I can't imagine that 10, 15 years ago, if we wouldn't have just been giving more and more. We can give players, parents, hotel rooms at the NCAA tournament, but we can't for home games or travel stipends or whatever players needed to function as college students on college campuses. Then I can't imagine that we would be at this point where everyone outside of the profession wanted to blow it up because everyone within the profession still understood that the scholarship is extremely valuable.
Right.
These guys are getting a lot comes with this education. Obviously, administrators and coaches, we've been well compensated for a long time. I don't want to say overpaid. I want to say well compensated. And so everyone within the profession still felt good about it, but all you heard on the outside was negativity. And so in my opinion, we should have just been giving a little bit more and a little bit more and keeping everyone as happy as possible because there was no way you were going to continue to pay coaches and generate the revenue that was being generated and not have players receive more in some way, shape, or form.
Dusty, you've been somebody who has studied, the craft of coaching. You haven't been a head coach as long as I think people think you have. You were an assistant coach at a number of stops before you got the FAU job, won there, and obviously jumped to Michigan. I know you've spent a lot of time through the years watching a lot of different basketball, different levels, internationally, European, EuroLeague. But in team building, have there been any unorthodox places that you've taken from things that you do with your group, even from outside of sports, in other areas of leadership or teams that are even certainly away from basketball, where you pulled things that even to this day are useful for you?
Woj, during COVID, and obviously I think anyone knew of our budget constraints at FAU, we had a few $1,000s left over, and I actually hired a consultant to help me with culture building and team building because I felt like that was a real blind spot for me. That was a hole in my game. And so he worked with me. We developed a plan, and I tried to execute it to perfection. And it was probably the worst culture year that we had since I've been a head coach. And I almost felt like trying so hard and trying to make it work backfired on us. And so since then, it's been more of just first and foremost, I want our staff to be completely vulnerable that we're going to screw up a lot. We're here to serve them. And I remember reading in Dean Smith's book, and I think this encompasses a lot, that we tell our guys, if you do what we ask you to do, then the wins and success, that's all you guys, 100% yours. And if you do what we ask you to do and we fail, that is on us as a staff. That is on me and our staff 100% with no questions asked. It's not going to be when we win, it's because I did this and I did that. And when we lose, it's because these guys this and these guys that. So from day one, we've tried to make it about the team, but probably in year 3 and year 4 at FAU was probably when we really committed that everything was about the players and we were going to serve them, and their job, as you sent me in Joe Ehrman's book a long time ago, was to love each other, to love and serve each other. And so we've tried to model that behavior every single day. We want them to eat first. We want them to be the priority in everything that we do. We want them to be prepared for whatever's next, but we also want them to understand that they're the most important people in our program. And our job is to coach them and help them. And even with that, we've had guys go into the portal and the staff is upset and we're mad for weeks. And I've told them, guys, we get paid to coach basketball, and let's do the absolute best job we can. And if a player doesn't want us to coach them anymore, it's okay. We're going to find someone else. And we have a strong belief that we're going to be able to bring in someone into our program that can replace them and be even better for us because they're bought into who we are and how we're trying to do it.
Just like a coach looks for every edge on game day, Novig gives fans the edge when they make their sports predictions. With no house and no hidden fees, Novig delivers the best odds every time. It's the smarter way to back your instincts. Learn more about Novig, America's #1 sports prediction market, at novig.us/Woj, and use code The Program for a match up to $100 on your first purchase. Last question, Dusty. We ask this on every show. The future of college basketball, what is it going to look like 5 years, 10 years from now?
Well, I can't imagine the teams, let's just go budgetarily, that are the top of college basketball and the bottom have the same voting power and have the same rights as far as an organizational structure. I can't imagine that the teams that generate the schools and brands that generate the most revenue are paid the same as the schools that don't. These are not things that I would vote for or vote against. I'm the company line guy that I don't need to be in those rooms. I don't need to know what their thought process is. I don't know how to generate revenue. I don't know how to market. I don't know the ins and outs of television industry. I know that I'm very, very fortunate to be a coach, period, let alone at Michigan in the Big Ten. And I love our profession. We have a team that I love coaching every single day. I hold the coaches I'm around in high regard. I think there's some really bright up-and-coming coaches in our game. I think there's some incredible veterans that are getting opportunities at the highest level now because they proved they could coach over a long period of time. So I think our game and is in a pretty good place despite the cosmic shift over the last couple of years. And I think that we're going to come out on the other side of this with some structure in the next couple of years. And then because of the popularity of live sports, because of the college brands, I think we're going to be in position to really build something sustainable going forward that a lot of people can benefit from.
Dusty, great to connect with you. Appreciate your friendship. Good luck as we get into Thanksgiving, into December here.
Thanks, Woj. And appreciate the text this morning on the sound bites from Coach Hardy from the last game. I got a good kick out of that.
Yeah, it was. We were all very entertained by his puck last night.
Woj, good luck this week in Florida.
All right. Thanks, Dusty.
Right. See you, man.
Thank you to my guest this week, Michigan coach Dusty May. We'll see you next Wednesday with another edition of the Program with Woj presented by Novig.